Hello everyone, it's the King's Voice with more stories from r/AlienEncounters. Second guessing a childhood experience. Was it an alien encounter? Got the spooky 1 year ago. I work a pretty easygoing office job, and I consistently listen to podcasts while I do my work. That being said, I've always had an interest in the paranormal and unexplained, so that's typically what I listen to. I was listening to an interview by Astonishing Legends with Terry Lovelace about things he encountered and what he experienced from a camping trip in Devil's Den back in the 70s. To sum it up, he touched on what had happened to him, and a couple of things stood out to me. It reminded me of something that happened to me as a kid that I always chalked up to be sleep paralysis, but now it has me second guessing myself. I must have been in about 3rd or 4th grade at the time, and we lived kind of on the edge of a bunch of farmland and woods. Our backyard opened up to our neighbors whom owned acres upon acres of land, and to the left was just an endless farmland and forest. We lived a few miles away from a really popular and pretty huge dairy farm at the time, but we were also a mile or two out from the main road that leads into town. I guess the point I'm getting at is we're kind of secluded, but not completely isolated. Midwest is like that at times, I guess. My room at the time was in the basement, and the stairs that led down to it were right in front of our back door. I slept with the bed right in line with the opening of the room as well. It was summer break, and after I finally decided I was tired, I went and laid down in my bed. My memory goes in and out at that point, and there's missing spots in between. I think as soon as I laid down, I just blacked out right there. I remember being startled awake just right after passing out, but I'm not sure how much time had passed between these 2 points. I immediately looked at the door towards the foot of my bed, and the door was just wide open, and there was this blinding light outside my room. I remember seeing this figure standing right there between me and the door. I couldn't make out any distinct features because of the blinding light coming from behind it. All I got was this outline and the rough shape of how it looked. It must have not been any shorter than me at the time, a little 3rd grader, and if I had to guess, maybe somewhere around 4 foot. It had a huge, bulbous head and a tiny body. In retrospect, it was shaped like a gray, but I don't know if that's too cliche to say. I just remember this utmost primal sense of fear, and I couldn't move. I never experienced that level of horror before in my life, and I have never felt that feeling since. I was lying in the back of my bed, and all I could do was stare. Just stare at this thing. I was trying to scream, but nothing could come out of my lungs, and I couldn't get up, or run, or move. I was completely paralyzed to that spot. I blacked out again. Then coming to, it was closer, right at the end of my bed. At that point I tried screaming again, but still I couldn't form any words. Nothing would come out of my mouth. And then once again, darkness. I came to that morning at the opposite end of my room, flopped across the little couch that I had. It's hard to explain because there's nothing between these points of time, just a blank spot in my memory. I tried to explain it to my mom, but it was just chalked up to be sleep paralysis and nothing more than a nightmare, because I probably stayed up too late to be honest, but that was besides the point. For a while after, I was horrified to watch any form of alien movies or even just anything on TV that resembled anything that I saw from the room. I would have a full-blown panic attack and even start hyperventilating just at the sight of the gray. I had gotten past that now, and it really doesn't get to me as much as it used to, but to this day, I cannot sleep facing my door. I don't even like sleeping near the door. I need to be as far away from it as possible. Even during the day, if I'm doing something in a room, I need to have the door closed. Even just the idea of having it open sends this massive feeling of discomfort and anxiety, and I just can't focus with it. I've experienced weird things throughout all of my life, but growing up, I've always chalked it up to be nothing more than sleep paralysis. But after listening to that podcast, I'm just not sure anymore. Can anyone offer any insight, or at least tell me if I'm crazy, or if this is something that can be explained? Even just thinking about it makes me feel like I'm honestly nuts. Possible Continuous Abductions by Italia94. This happened to me back in 2013. I was about 18 at the time. I was a healthy, normal woman by all accounts and lived in a suburb of South Florida. Just at the juncture in my life, I was moving up north to UF, which is in Gainesville. Aside from the university, it's a very boring town, mostly nothing up there. I had noticed that before moving there, and during my time there once a month, always on the same night, I think the first Sunday of every month, I wouldn't be able to sleep. Without fail, Sunday would come, and I wouldn't sleep. I would toss and turn all night. Sometimes after those nights, I would wake up with something strange on my body. Once on my lower spine, right on the cord, I woke with a large red bump, perfectly centered. It wasn't itchy or a bug bite, and it was unlike a pimple. Another time, I awoke with a scar across my lower abdomen. It was long, and unlike a scratch, it was brown, like a cauterized scar. But it left my body within a day or two, like a scratch might have. On one such Sunday, my boyfriend happened to be spending the night. It was my parents' rule that if he would sleep in a separate bedroom, it was okay, but before he went off to his room, he laid next to me in my bed for a while, and we talked. He was saying something when suddenly he went quiet, and his gaze darted back behind him. I asked what was the matter, but he just shrugged it off, and he went back to his room. We both tried to get some sleep. However, like usual on these nights, I tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep, a feeling of dread preventing me from sleeping as usual. I got restless and decided to go to sleep in the room with my boyfriend, hoping I might be able to relax with him in there at least. But still, I couldn't sleep. Once I was nearly dozing off, I awoke in a bizarre fright, which was so uncharacteristic. I gave up and went back to my own room until I stared at the wall and fell asleep again. When I woke up the next morning, I told my boyfriend that I couldn't sleep at all as usual, and I felt like something was coming to get me. He told me in that moment the previous night when he suddenly fell silent mid-conversation, he thought something was outside my window. He said for whatever reason, the first thing that came to his mind was an alien, and it froze him in fear. He also told me that shortly after I returned to my room in the middle of the night, he was disturbed by a loud static sound, and felt vibrations in the air. After months, those routine once-a-month sleepless nights stopped, and never returned. I still don't know what it was about, or if it even was anything, but that night put both of us on edge, and I'd like not to think about it again. "6 years later, it's like it never happened," by Concerned Wife. This may be long, but honestly, I'm looking for some answers. So I've pushed this off for the last few years, not thinking much of it. And it just kind of hit me about a week ago, and I can't stop thinking about it now. 6 years ago, my boyfriend at the time, husband now, woke me up sweating and shaking in absolute fear. I asked him what was wrong, and he began stuttering and telling me that I would never believe him. He went on to tell me that he was woken up around midnight to this person standing at the end of the bed. Yes, my first thought was sleep paralysis as well, but he sat up and was ready to attack as if he needed to. And in his head, he had heard a voice that wasn't his, telling him, "It is okay. We weren't here for ill reasons." Oddly enough, he had said he had felt immediately calm after hearing this. He also noticed how shocked he was with how light of a sleeper I am that I wasn't awoken by him. This being he was staring at was unnaturally tall, and actually had to crouch to look at him due to its height and us being in the basement. He said that this being reached out for a greeting, and again began hearing a voice in his head saying, "Hello." Nothing much else happened to my husband that night. All he remembered at the time was the last thing he had heard from it, and in his mind he had heard, "I will see you again soon." And then he said it felt like as if time had started again, not realizing that it ever felt like it had truly stopped until that point. He was back in reality, and that's when he awoke me, feeling it had only been about 10 to 15 minutes when it had actually been over an hour. These visits continued for months, minimum once a week, max 3 to 4 times. But my husband got less and less frightened every time it happened. This thing and him built a sort of friendship, from what he explained to me. It had a name, but for the life of me, I can't remember what he had said it was. And it answered any and every question my husband had. And I won't mention what those were exactly, but after a while it just had stopped. He stopped waking me up in the middle of the night or telling me about it in the next morning. But the times were always the same. He would be awoken around midnight, and they would have discussions about literally anything that my husband's curiosity had. And he would come back to reality and would essentially unfreeze again between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. Having only felt the encounter had lasted just a short period of time every time. Once it stopped, I can't iterate just how much I mean it stopped. It was like for him, it had never happened. It's been 6 years or so. I know this is choppy, but it's hard to remember everything with it having been so long ago. I forgot about it for so long, and I don't know what prompted me to remember it about a week ago, but now I can't stop thinking about it, and the oddness of it, and how it just stopped so suddenly. And he's literally never made mention of it ever again. I've never brought it up to him in fear that he may think I'm crazy, which I don't know why that's my fear. But part of me thinks if there's a chance he's completely forgotten it, whether it be on his own or something else, he may think I've gone insane. Anyways, this is long, so if you've read the whole thing and have any ideas or similar stories, please let me know. I'm trying to figure this out now, and it's literally keeping me up at night just thinking about it. Thank you guys. This has been 3 more stories from Reddit. If you'd like to hear more, please subscribe and hit the bell. Uploads are every Sunday. If you have any ideas or anything you'd like me to hear, just go ahead and reach out either in the comments or to my email. And just stay tuned for more to come.